1. The shaft that took a wrong turn, based on the elevator repair story, plot preserved. When I was 7 I wanted a badge and a siren. By 19 I wanted rent money and quiet. Life picked option 2. I ended up greasing cables and arguing with relays for a company called Apex Lift and Hoist out of East Briar. The pay was survival with a side of vertigo. My mentor, if the word can be abused that far, was a veteran tech named Rick Halvorson. He treated instruction like a luxury item and oxygen like something I didn't deserve as much as he did. Elevator work is not the press-a-button nonsense people imagine. It's heat baked into machine rooms, oil that never washes out. Old steel whose patience is older than yours, and the kind of silence that sits on your shoulders when you're standing on top of a car that's hanging by cables you pretend will never fail. Most days are maintenance, inspect safeties, brush carbon dust out of motor housings, adjust door rollers that insist on retiring. The other days are doors wedged on strangers' faces. Panic voices between floors, building managers with paperwork smiles that get brittle fast. The job that changed how I listen came from a tired office block on Calder Street. Built in the 70s, rebadged in the 90s. Half-leased, all weary. The manager's report sounded routine, intermittent stalls, doors opening to masonry on a non-stop floor. One tenant claiming the car took him somewhere that wasn't a floor. Rick laughed in the way a man laughs when he's certain. You'll be the one crawling the dirtiest tunnel. Lock the car out, he told the manager in the lobby. I'll send my apprentice to the pit. I'll make friends with the control panel. So I hauled the tool bag down concrete stairs that smelled like old floods and cheap paint and walked into the basement. Gut where buildings hide their heavy secrets. The motor room was a concrete pocket at the end of a long corridor. The gear set was older than I was, the governor will scored by 100 inspections, the relay cabinet a museum of brittle bakelite. I leaned in to trace wiring I didn't trust, and heard the car moving. We dropped it at 12 and flagged it out of service. The panel upstairs said it was going nowhere. The sound said otherwise. Cables tightening, machine humming, a body descending through the spine of the building. The motion stopped somewhere. Between levels. The room settled. And then I heard it, 3 small, polite taps from inside the shaft. Not frantic. Not trapped animal. A knuckle against steel, waiting. I stepped toward the open throat where the car guides vanished into dark. Dust breathed up. The black was thick enough to be texture. Another set of 3. Measured. Patient. You can insult a lot of things by refusing to answer, but I didn't want to answer whatever that was, so I left. Upstairs. Rick leaned on the lobby wall making a manager nervous with his smile. I told him I'd heard knocking. He told me pipes knock and rookies leap and that if I had free time I could use it to fetch the solvent because greasy handprints on doors make tenants complain. We rode to 12 to reset a relay he claimed had a favorite corner. I keyed the hall doors. The car wasn't there, just a shaft. And air that felt exhaled by something with a large chest. She's a floor up, he said, and I believed him because I wanted to. While he coaxed life out of a cabinet, I shone my flashlight into the column of dark. For a breath I saw someone pressed flat against the shaft wall like a child hiding from a game that had stopped being a game. A figure at the edge of the beam, then no figure. Dust motes played dumb. Back up, Calder, Rick snapped. If you fall I will not give you mouth to mouth. The car crept down. When the doors finally parted, something ink-dark covered the stainless, handprints, dozens, small palms. Large palms, fingers dragged as if smeared in oil that remembered each ridge. Rick declared teenagers and ordered me to clean. We ran the car. It behaved. Back on 12, I stepped in to prove to myself that nothing about a box on cables could be stranger than a kid learning a trade. The hallway in front of me changed. Not a blink or a trick of light, changed. The beige carpet and flicker fluorescence were replaced by a corridor of raw concrete, damp and unpainted, bare bulbs swaying on chains. The air smelled like wet dust and old coins. Something at the far end shifted, a weight heavier than sight. I took one step back without lowering my eyes, and the 12th floor office returned like a staged apology. Rick stepped in and called me delicate. We finished the run. The car buzzed and shuddered in the way old cars sing to themselves. The analog indicator skipped from 10 to B2 and back. No sub-basement 2, I said. Rick smacked the case and told me to marry someone rich if I wanted a modern panel. In the lobby I was almost brave enough to laugh at myself. The manager promised to mail the check. As I turned, the car doors glided shut on their own because that's what doors do. And under the closing metal I heard the polite 3 taps. We weren't scheduled there again. I told Rick the building gave me headaches. He called me soft and gave the next apprentice the address. Years later, in hospitals and malls, alone in elevators at weird hours, I still catch my stare snagging on the panel windows. Waiting for prints to bloom out of clean steel or a wrong floor to appear where no floor should exist. That's the trouble with being taught to listen to machines. Eventually you're the one that can't unhear what answered you back. 2 cameras that woke T.O. nothing, based on the scrapyard/security cam childhood story, plot preserved. The first camera I learned to trust wasn't a phone. It was a dusty CRT on a metal shelf in a parts warehouse that used to be a hangar. I was 8 when we moved to the coastal town of Quellen Bay, more pine than ocean, more rain than plan. My father, Jono, took a manager job at a salvage and spares yard behind the industrial rail siding. The yard had a front shop with a bell on the door and a long back room, where shelves sagged under alternators and mirrors, followed by the yard proper, rows of stripped shells slumped in high grass. Nothing grew right behind the fence. Out on the farms the rain made pumpkins obscene. Under the chain link, the soil kept the color of old paper. My father said it was oil. My grandmother said some places stay hungry no matter how much you feed them. Because Saturdays were skeleton crew and we were out of grandmothers, I went with him. He set me up in the office, drywall to waist, glass to ceiling, clipboard smell, pencil cups, and that square-eyed security monitor connected to a recorder that woke only when something moved. If the screen lights, Dad told me, holler. It'll keep you busy and out of the parts bins. The screen woke to no one. A blue stamp in the corner ticked time. We rewound. Nothing. The second time the motion tripped. He scolded me because he'd just walked past the camera a minute earlier and assumed it lagged. The third time, he stood behind my chair to catch the thing in the act. The monitor breathed to life. Nobody walked. Nobody ran. The yard gate stayed shut. The picture watched an empty aisle until the system declared itself bored and went back to sleep. He called Jerry, his best man on the floor, a thin, sunburned skeptic with a kindness shaped like a squint. Jerry walked past the lens, checked door chains, scratched his mustache, and reported the same news you give a child when there's nothing to report: it's fine. That afternoon the camera pinged 4 more times for air. We chewed the silence like gristle and agreed to never talk about it again. Which is a way adults like to pretend they won. That winter my mother worked extra shifts. My baby brother howled himself hoarse at daycare. We made friends with a family across town. Willie from Dad's shop, his parents, his 2 brothers, his sister, all stacked like books in a 10-room house they used only 3 of. When I slept over, I learned their habits had teeth. Everyone was in bed by 9. The grandparents insisted on a hallway light. I thought it was because older feet and dark floors have a mean kind of love for each other. I learned it was because of the woman. I didn't see her. Willie's mother did. She was ironing in the front room and glanced up at the mirror to judge a crease. Behind her, a woman in ruined clothes, skin gone to wax, missing an arm and the head that should have scolded everyone for leaving lights on. The figure dissolved the instant she turned. The grandparents admitted they'd started keeping a Bible open weeks earlier. They didn't say why until now. The house stood on part of a cemetery nobody had moved quite completely. So did ours, as it turned out. Subdivisions eat what's convenient and leave the bones for zoning laws to forget. The light stayed on in that hall every night afterward. That didn't stop the footsteps. Not footfalls you can blame on pipes or old boards being indecisive. These walked from the kitchen to the room where 3 boys slept and stopped like a thought just outside the door. Back at the yard, my father reorganized the back lot. He hired a crane, stacked shells, and burned the weeds back to brown dirt so someone with a shopping list could find the right shape with fewer tetanus shots. The camera loved it. It lit up more often. As if the reordering of heaviness woke something that wanted to witness. We checked the tape. Movement indicated. No one present. We started to keep that as a ledger. Ghosts owe us nothing, but they still get recorded when they pass under cheap lenses. Eventually Dad left that job. We moved once more and let the rain pretend to erase the rest. But memory is just a different recorder. A system that wakes when motion you can't see kicks it on. Years later I found the yard on satellite images. The rows were different. The office window still reflected light like a square of winter. Sometimes at home I'll be working late and the webcam LED flickers. There's no app open. No update scheduled. No cat. The screen shows the same thing the old monitor did, the aisle where nothing walks. Lit by a patience I still don't know how to thank or fear the proper amount. 3. What we sealed in the wall, based on the demolition/abatement story, plot preserved. I do mold and water damage remediation. Not glamorous, but it lets you sleep at night knowing a family won't breathe mushrooms. The strangest job I took sat on a hill outside Ruskin Falls, a too big house too small to be a manor, stitched together from years of additions. The new pieces never married the old. Where one century met another, the seams soured, a wall between a fresh bedroom and an untouched master, the pool house welded to a bathroom the color of hotel soap, the partition between the original suite and the shiny renovation. The materials had the look of a body rejecting a transplant. My general manager crosses himself every time he drives past cemeteries. He wouldn't even park on the property line for this one. Believe in ghosts? He asked over coffee. Believe in ventilation, I said. It keeps more things alive than superstition. He smirked and assigned the assessment to me and Jack, the smallest guy on our crew, a loud atheist who whistled while he pulled trim. The first wrong note was a bird. While we wrestled the ring of keys and learned which door didn't want which metal tooth, a dove circled us at head height like a guardian having a crisis, cooing angry as a gossip, then flew into the pool house wall and broke itself. Jack went green and begged me to bury it. I did, because sometimes respect calms what irritation never will. Inside, we set to work at the worst wall, the damaged partition that separated old master from new. We sang along to terrible radio and cut out sheetrock panel by panel. Under the gypsum, brick. Behind the brick, enough space for a room that wasn't accounted for. In the floor plan. Measure one side, then the other. Add the closet. The numbers know how to lie when they're told to buy a house. I closed the closet quietly. I closed the smaller room. I told myself we'd ask the owner what used to be here when he arrived. We hauled the first bags to the truck. When we came back, the smaller room stood open, closet yawning like a peeled scab. Jack dropped the shop vac. I said we must have missed a latch. He nodded too fast. We vacuumed. We bagged. Every so often something with hands turned the vacuum off when neither of us was close enough to kick it. Jack panicked. I got angry in the way a person gets angry when a thing they can't name lays a paw on their work. I stepped into the doorway. And said in a voice I don't admire, "You're not welcome. Leave us." The room breathed, like a chest that didn't know if it wanted to laugh. Later, a door slammed from a wide-open position hard enough to shove the shop vac across the floor. Jack fell on his backside. Eyes big, hands small. Noon light sat clean on the windowsills. No storm in sight. We stood there listening to the house do nothing loudly. Jack asked to start the pool house while I finished. I said yes. A second dove broke itself on the bay window of the master bedroom. I whispered something unkind to the world and kept scraping. Then came the whimper. Soft and dog small. From behind me, at the door. I turned and saw Jack leaning there, eyes not focused on this life. Blood ticking off his fingers onto the hardwood. He didn't answer his name until I carried him over the threshold to the front steps. Something about outdoors shook his head clean. He had no memory of how he'd cut his hand or why he'd walked back in. The wound didn't need stitches. His voice did. I finished what a person could finish quickly, cleaned the smear of his blood off floors the owner would pretend were original. And hauled him to the van. 3 new doves lay against the side panel where they'd flown themselves into sheet metal until they learned nothing. I drove us away with the sort of careful speed that looks like a prayer. At home my wife burned sage. And muttered the old words her grandmother taught her. I made myself breathe until my hands believed me. Jack didn't return to himself. The man who turned every job into a sing-along and every lunch into a joke turned into the kind of quiet that tricks you into blaming yourself. He stopped answering calls. Our boss requested a welfare check. The cop who responded came back to the office with a color I haven't seen on men who say everything is fine. I went to Jack's place and looked through the window. Doves lay like folded paper across the yard. Inside, Jack was bones with a jacket. His palms and the tops of his feet were bruised. And scabbed in matched pairs I didn't need a catechism to identify. He smiled up at the ceiling with a mouth that didn't know his history. He didn't answer the door. We never spoke again. I've ripped a lot of walls. I've seen a lot of bad ideas bricked up and called a solution. Sometimes a house seal is a mercy. Sometimes it's a message, whatever you think you've trapped knows the map better than you do. If you ever feel an old building, decide you're in the wrong place, don't debate the architecture. Step outside, count your fingers, and be grateful for wherever someone else decided the hallway ends. For the door that knew your name, based on the Chinese restaurant story, plot preserved. My first steady job paid me in cash tips and a knowledge that doors can learn. The jade lantern sat in a strip of shops. Off the highway, tinted windows, lacquered reds, a fish painting whose eyes followed you like a joke that eventually gets mean. Day shift felt like soup and families. Night belonged to the kind of silence that's heavier than dark. The owner cooked. His English was a shrug and a bell. On weeknights I worked the floor alone, seating couples, refilling tea. Hauling bags, checking the latch after every customer because the wind that tunneled along that sidewalk could yank the door hard enough to bruise. Habit kept the latch honest. Habit is a god in places that don't close until 10. The front door chimed an electric ding when it opened so the kitchen knew a mouth had arrived. The first time I heard it and found no one, I blamed nerves. The second time I blamed a teen who'd put a hand on the latch and then thought better of coming in. By the second week of it happening, I started saying, "Be right with you," to no one and smiling at the room like we'd agreed on a bit. Sometimes the door would open and close with the patience of a polite guest, swing in, pause, swing back, click, all the choreography a person runs when they walk through a threshold. Sometimes the door would do it while 3 tables watched and went very interested in their menus. When it got bad, the door did more than pretend. It brought something in with it. Not a person. Not a dog. A shape with the logic of a shadow, roughly the size of a child, sliding low along the floor and disappearing. Under a booth. A woman made me check under the tablecloth with a flashlight once because she swore someone's pet had come in. Nothing. Chairs. Gum. A dropped napkin. Another time, as I stood behind the register, I watched something dark as over steep tea. Peek around the corner of the half wall and withdraw before my feet remembered how to go collect a credit card. Twice while I rolled silverware I felt a hand grab my knee from behind the counter. Not cold. Not numb dead. A pressure like a child. Asking attention in the way children don't understand makes adults fall down. My heart tried to imitate a hummingbird. I finished wrapping forks because pretending you're calm is cheaper than therapy. The whispers began after. Not words I can quote. Half-thoughts feathering the room, sliding between the music and the kitchen's sizzle. You could tell when customers heard them too, the quick shoulder twist, the wide blink, the decision to raise one's voice enough to build. A world where everything was explainable. I'd smile the way servers do when the table wants reassurance. The bell would ring from the back. I'd run plates. The door would open for nobody in particular and close behind what nobody had brought with them. One night before closing, the bright lights over the register turned the room into a stage. The kitchen door had a rectangle of plexi. So we wouldn't brain each other with trays. In that glass I saw the dining room reflected. No cute shadow. No little trick. A tall outline. Broad-shouldered, head bent as if it were trying to fit under a ceiling that wasn't built for it. I froze, then walked as if every step had to pass an inspection. I told the cook's wife on the phone there was someone in the dining room. She told the cook in words he trusted. He checked the front latch, walked the booths, lifted tablecloths, and came back shaking his head. No one. Soon after, a tanning salon opened next door and kept its lights late. The door stopped opening by itself. The chime lost its imaginary friends. The whispers went elsewhere. The room returned to being simply a room. I went to tan twice and couldn't keep from feeling watched by a blank patch of air above the bulbs. Maybe the thing we'd met found someplace brighter to haunt. Maybe it walked the shared wall until it liked the music better. Maybe light is just a louder kind of silence some creatures prefer. Here's what I learned: always check the latch, but never expect a latch to be a shield. Learn which silences are weather and which are attention. If a door opens with courtesy and no patron walks through it, don't be the one who says hello first. And when the night decides to behave, say thank you under your breath. Gratitude is a habit too. Really scary stories, every day. Subscribe, like if you like, turn on the bell so you don't miss new videos.